The War of the Worlds, the 1953 version, is my VHS watch for the week. And this is a really fun one because this is the same version of the VHS that I had in my home when I was growing up. So I saw this movie many, many times as a child. We would watch it all the time. It scared the shit out of me then, and it still scares the shit out of me, believe it or not. This is based on H.G. Wells's classic novel about an asteroid that falls to the Earth, and then, at least in the movie, I've never read the book, crafts come out of the asteroid and start attacking major cities. Humanity must wage war against these aliens, and there are some social elements that I didn't remember or maybe went over my head when I was a kid. For me, the star of the show are the crafts, which have this retro future but super smooth and sleek design. They have these antennae that come out of the asteroid. So scary and creepy. And then later on in the film, the reveal of the aliens themselves. I could see how anybody in the modern time could watch this and say it was hokey, not scary at all. But you gotta understand, I've been watching horror movies all my life, and I think the only thing that truly scares me is aliens. So whatever it was, maybe it was a dormant memory of just being scared shitless by this movie. When I watched it the other day, I was locked in, and I was so glad it held up in that way. Towards the end of the movie, my wife came into the room unbeknownst to me, and with no ill intent, she startled me by walking up behind my chair, and I actually screamed because I was already in the zone of being ready to be frightened by seeing the last gasp of the aliens. So that was an excellent added effect. But yeah, if you've never seen this movie, it is quite a classic. I would say if you can vibe with the original Godzilla, you can vibe with this. And I'm not saying one is better than the other or just as good or whatever. I'm just saying they give me the same vibes, and they're from around the same time period, so that makes sense, of course. I'm very glad to have this particular copy of this movie back in my collection, and I'm so glad with how it held up. It was such a joy to rewatch this movie after so many years. Teen Spirit from 2018 sees Elle Fanning playing an aspiring singer who is not exactly encouraged by her family to join a talent show contest, which is similar to American Idol or something like that. Now, this film is interesting in the context of my reviews because I talked about a movie called Linda, Linda, Linda a couple episodes back. And with that film, I was talking about how it wasn't this underdog story. It was just a story of a group of teenage girls who wanted to play a few songs at a high school talent show thing. So not aspirations to make it big. With Teen Spirit, that's exactly what it is. It's an underdog tale of someone who has aspirations to make it big. And you may think that that is an overused, over cliched trope for a movie like this, and perhaps it is. However, I really gelled with this movie. I loved it a lot. One of the things that hooked me right in the beginning is the music. I don't know if you would technically call this film a musical, but there are many performances of popular songs that are actually sung by Elle Fanning herself. And the movie kicks off with music from two of my favorite artists. The song that opens the film is a Grimes song, and then the first song we see Fanning's character perform is a Tegan and Sara song. It really reeled me in right from the beginning. Our main character discovers a mentor in an unlikely place when she meets a gentleman who hangs out at the nightclub that she sings at and discovers that he has a past in the music industry. I really liked this dynamic. The mentor character is guarded of his past but also protective of his young protege. And as predictable as you can criticize this movie for being, I guess I'm just a sucker for a good movie that's about music and the love of music and the drive to make music and be a performer. It's something that I can identify with. And if you make a movie that has a bunch of songs that I really love, it's a formula for something that I'm going to like, even if it's predictable and has some cliched elements. Having said all that, this is a somewhat well-reviewed movie on Letterboxd, so I'm not alone in my love of it. So if you want to see just a cool movie with a bunch of good music that has a little bit of heart about a young, talented singer who sees an avenue to make it big, or you're a fan of Elle Fanning, or you're a fan of mid-2000s pop music, definitely check out Teen Spirit. Spider Baby from 1967 is a very odd and interesting film, and it's one that I really wish I liked more than I did. This movie was believed to be lost. It was relegated to obscurity until the 90s, when apparently it was discovered and restored. And you can see in this film traces of what would come in horror movies in the future. For example, this movie has a lot in common with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The movie is about the Merry family, a very odd group of individuals, the children of which have some kind of disease that makes them mentally unable to develop, so they act like weird children despite being young adults. They are taken care of by a caretaker played by Chaney Jr., and he gives a performance where you are convinced that he loves these children and wants to protect them, but they are very dangerous to any outsiders who happen to wander into their web, let's say. The standout performance in this movie is by Jill Banner, who plays Virginia, who is basically the titular Spider Baby. She likes to play Spider with her victims, which entails throwing a net over them and then stabbing them to death with 2 knives. And these were the parts of the movie that were the coolest. To see her dance around with the knives, looking menacing, definitely was off-putting and creepy. And it was interesting to learn a few things about her. For example, she lied about her age. She was 17 years old when this movie filmed, but she lied about her age to avoid any kind of child labor regulations. And also, she acted throughout her life, but she was only in a few films because her life was cut very short when she died in her early 30s in a traffic accident. Unfortunately, where this movie falters, and the reason I rated it so harshly, was because there are long sequences of people just talking to each other, and they're very static shot, reverse shot conversations that seem to go on for way too long. For me, this takes away the rewatchability of this movie. But I will say, in a way, this is the most loving 2-star review, the most respectful 2-star out of 5 that I've given to a movie, because I really did respect, again, the performances and how subversive and transgressive this movie actually is for the time period it came out. It reminds me a lot of Private Property, another movie that I covered on a previous episode, where it was a very transgressive, subversive film that was thought lost forever and now has been rediscovered as a classic. I think Private Property and Spider Baby kind of go hand in hand in that way. But this is a very well-loved horror classic, so don't take my word for it. I feel like now that it's available, everybody should check it out if you're a fan of horror. And the speed bumps of those long conversations aside, there are some really cool, interesting, off-putting, uncomfortable, and wacky things in this movie that make it worth watching. And I think that'll do it for this one. I appreciate you watching to the end. If you like these short movie reviews, I have a whole playlist of them on my channel. I do this every week, so I'll see you on the next one.